What's up, guys, and welcome back to Stick Time with Matt and Dave. I'm Matt Nokowski.
And I'm Dave Connor. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. It's actually, we just keep rolling through these episodes, and it feels so kind of natural. And really, thank you guys for hanging around with us. Even if you're not hanging around with us, we're probably still going to be cutting this podcast either way because we really like talking about it.
Yeah, dude, we love
FPV.
talking to each other about it and just giving each other personal experiences. So I learn a lot from you. You learn a lot from me.
Absolutely.
And I hope you guys enjoyed the last episode. I know the audio is a little sketchy here and there, but we really wanted to give you guys a sense of community and what we do actually live out in the field. So that was pretty cool.
And it was a very unique experience because I don't think anybody's ever really done that. There's been some vlogs of like races and stuff.
Yeah, TBS does a pretty good job. Team Black Sheep, if you guys don't know about them.
Trappy.
Trappy. He's been doing, the Black Sheep Lounge, and he's always been at like IO and stuff, and he'll be doing a live stream, and not so much a podcast, but more of a video live stream, and he does a pretty good job at that too.
Yeah, of what's going on. You get to see all these people, and that's what we kind of hope to carry going into IO and Buffalo Bando and everything coming up this year.
Yep, agreed.
So it's going to be, we've definitely got some kinks to work out.
especially with the live video, we're going to find out a better way to record it and get better audio out of it.
Yeah, and if it's going to be shared on Instagram or Facebook Live or something, from there, we're going to definitely going to figure it out and roll with that. But today's episode, Matt.
Oh yeah, let's get into it.
Me and you are talking about the V and FPV, the video.
The video, man, the most important, probably the most important to fly FPV.
Well, first-person view. First person literally just describes the view.
Yep.
So you need the view. You need the video.
Or you're not flying FPV.
You need to see or you're blind.
Yep.
So this is going to be kind of a gear-intensive kind of episode, but also that just sharing the importance of kind of the right gear. We're going to even be talking about the base stations and modules, the HD cams that are coming out now. I know Cadix has the Turtle.
All-in-one kind of FPV feed and HD recording all in one.
Yeah, and it's a cool solution. There was, you have the board that you have to mount and stuff too to just keep the SD card available. But even as, Foxier just made the box. So something similar to a session. So
the external HD.
A small profile. So there's that in video as well. I mean, for a freestyle pilots, video is a very large portion of what they do.
It's the main portion for freestyle guys because they want to record that nice buttery HD footage, and they want to make a nice little flight edit out of it so they can share it with the world and even watch it back. And there's ways, we'll get into it a little bit more, but there's ways with HD video you can see how your quad's actually tuned and tune out some of those issues you couldn't see in your FPV cam.
And you get the frames per second that you miss in that analog feed.
Correct.
That you get in that digital feed. But even on top of that, we're going to talk a little bit about the needs of different kind of situations. If you're going to be racing, what VTX, or what video setup is going to be the best. If you're for freestyle, what should you look for? Or even there's a lot of guys going long range now.
I haven't done it too much. I know you haven't done it too much. I've done more like mid-range. I can't even say it's long range because there's guys out there like Jet, Gab 707, just to name a few that are going.
Moke, I believe.
Oh yeah, Moke. Trappy's the OG of long range. So
Trappy, incredible.
Those guys
with
are going
wings and stuff too.
Those guys are going miles, man. And I actually just watched an interview with Trappy, and the first long range flight he ever had, he did on accident. He went 3 miles, and that might have been a world record he was saying back in the day. But there's definitely different ways you set up your gear for that kind of flying.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So let's just kind of jump right into it. I just really want to stress the importance of video. When I first started out, I was buying those cheap Chinese, the TS5828s and the TS5823s and stuff.
Yeah, those are the ones with the little dip switches that you don't really see too much anymore.
No, and for good reason. I mean, just the video transmission was dirty. I never could get good signal, but it was also based on the goggles that I had too. So that's why we're going to dive into gear here a little bit because it is really important, and if you do plan on flying FPV, I mean, I started with box goggles. I think you said you started with box goggles.
Let me think back, dude. No, dude, I actually didn't start with box goggles. I actually started with a pair of Attitudes, like Fat Shark Attitudes.
Now, where did you get those from? Because those are kind of, I mean, at least when you started, those were very expensive.
Yeah,
Fat Sharks are still very expensive.
I had a decent job back in the day, made a little bit of money, and they would send me on trips to local cities in Ohio and sometimes even in Indiana and stuff like that, working for AT&T. And I just so happened to be out in Columbus on a Friday when I got paid. Ready-made RCs right there. I looked online. They had like, you get VTX, you got the goggles, you got the antenna, you got a battery, everything for like $300, $320.
Oh,
so I went that route.
That's a steal.
Yeah. But a lot of guys do start with box goggles, and there's a lot of kits out there that you can get the box goggles included in your ready to fly kit.
Absolutely. And there are tons of drones now that either have screens or, I mean, either way you start, it's a start.
Correct.
But we're going to kind of evolve a little bit past just that start for, I mean, and I don't want to even say past that start, because one thing, if I looked back, it's hard to know if you're going to stick with the hobby as a beginner. But if I looked back, man, investing in FPV goggles from the start would have been like really good, because I'm running right now Amway Commanders.
Yep.
And you're running the HDOs.
Yeah, I'm running the HDOs by Fat Shark, and I've always stuck with Fat Shark, man. Fat Shark's been a good, solid brand. It is a little bit on the pricey side, but it's just quality.
You get what you pay for.
It's quality, man. And even with the Fat Sharks, I started with the base Attitude model, which was a little bit cheaper, and I still, since I'm in the hobby and I love it, I still upgraded from that, and then I went to the HD2s with the bigger screen, Dominator HD2s, and now I'm eventually at the HDO. So I still upgrade, but it would have been nice to like, oh, I'm going to stay in this hobby forever, or, you know, for a while. Let's just skip the Attitudes. The Attitudes were okay, but let's just skip them and go to a Dominator.
Yeah, go straight to it. I mean, and that's what I kind of wish. I spent a lot of time learning with box goggles just because they were $50 on Amazon, you know? So those went down very quick. But then also, you know, bringing in the aspect of having better video and having clearer picture, having that, like the box goggles, I've talked about it in past episodes, couldn't lock onto a channel. So you'd get close, but you wouldn't be like spot on.
Yeah,
so
and I agree with that. And they don't come with a lot of the features that some of the other goggles have.
No,
so
the DVR, the fans,
fan, AV out. Some of those box goggles don't even come, and that's big
AV
in racing.
Out, AV in,
AV in, yes,
yeah, is huge for large MultiGP races where they have active ground stations for all of the pilots, which is usually your best bet, because on a lot of those races, it's, hey, if we see an issue with our DVR, yes, we'll give you a re-race or something, you know.
But if you're using your own goggles and you don't plug into their modules or their bays, you're not getting that rerun.
They're probably not even checking their bay, like, oh, well, you're not on ours, so ours could have been different.
Yep,
cool.
Correct.
And if they do check it and it is different, then it's your gear. So that's always been kind of the... I mean, a lot of guys do trust their own gear and don't want to plug in because they trust their gear. But I would say the vast majority of pilots do plug in.
It's still electronics, man, and electronics still go bad at any given moment. So I always plug into a ground station just for that instance. You know, you get that 9 times out of 10, it's great. That one time you're racing, dude. I mean, yeah, I trust my gear, but that one time you're racing and you get a blip or some kind of video crossover.
At the most important part.
Yep, you want that rerun. So that's why I always do AV in, AV out. And then another good thing with more advanced goggles, you get module bays.
With your Fat Sharks, yes.
You get module bays, which a lot of box goggles don't get that.
No.
You get a diversity.
Well, you know? And diversity too, with diversity in the module bays. That's the beauty of Fat Sharks, and I think why they are kind of the industry standard is because you do have the upgrade ability of, if a new module comes out, that somehow, like when Rapid Fire first dropped, and it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like diversity that doesn't skip a beat.
Yep.
And crystal clear all the time, especially with multipathing, and you hook up 2 different kinds of antennas that are seeing different signals come back to them. It was a game changer. So looking at those kind of upgrades, if you bought a set of goggles, and I mean, goggles are expensive, but you don't crash them. if you bought an expensive set of goggles or an inexpensive set of goggles right out the bat, you are kind of locked into whatever's in them.
Yeah.
Which I've actually lucked out with, and I did a lot of research to prove to myself even before I bought them that it wasn't going to be a bad mistake, was buying the Amway Commanders.
Yeah, no, those are great, man, and they're middle of the road price range. You're not super expensive like Dominator HDOs, which are $500-$600. You're at that like $300-$400 range, which is
I think it's
middle
$300
of the road.
Now. I bought mine for $350. I think I've seen decently perfectly good used pairs going for $200, and for just as good of a goggle as the Amway Commanders are. I mean, I've been flying with them now for almost 2 years. Never had to upgrade them. The diversity was ahead of its time.
I was just going to mention that. I can't remember what video receiver they have in it. There's an actual name of it, but it's like one of the best out there on the market. That's why those goggles are so good. They put like a good video receiver inside
And
them.
You mentioned diversity. That's something that was ahead of its time even for when that pair of goggles was released, was built-in diversity.
Built in, yeah.
Because a lot of them only had one receiver, wouldn't switch between two antennas. And so you were locked into, if you were running a patch or if you were running a circular polarized antenna, if you were running a dipole. It depended on your environment, really.
You had to pick one or the other, but the beauty of how the technology has come so far is like we were saying, Fat Sharks, you get a module bay, and the modules that are coming out now, 9 times out of 10 have diversity on it, and you can put a patch on, and you can put a circular polarized antenna.
9 times out of 10, man. 10 times out of 10. I think diversity is 100% completely the norm right now.
And no, you might be right. It might be the norm, but you still I know Fat Shark, when you buy some of their goggles, they'll just give you it's a Next Wave module, and it only has one antenna.
But that was the standard back in the day, and it's nice. But that's something that why I bought the Amways was because I didn't want to spend $350 on a pair of goggles and then have to go buy another $50 or $100 module to even make them work.
Correct.
And then they don't come in with antennas, so then you're buying antennas on top of that. And some of those top-end antennas that you want on your goggles that you know aren't going to get thrashed are $20, $30, $40.
Yeah, dude. So if you buy top-of-the-line goggles plus a top-of-the-line receiver plus top-of-the-line antennas, you're at that $700, almost $800 price range.
It's such a huge investment. That's why the Amways were so attractive to me. $350. And Andy Stankiewicz, who we had on a past episode, he actually let me try them on. When I was still flying box goggles, I was borrowing my brother-in-law's Dominator V2s for when we were, when I would go to races, because he wasn't racing at the time. And so I would borrow his goggles to fly and, practice with the week before. But I was out flying the one day and said, I've been looking at those Amways. How do you like them, Andy? And Andy was like, dude, pop them on, fly a couple packs with them. Sold me. But that's like the number one thing is like, if you want to try on goggles, there is no try and fly with them.
You got to find a local
shoot
field
blindly and buy them. So it's best to try them and know that they're going to fit your face, because with those smaller kind of goggle styles, not the box style, there are, and that's another thing I like about the Amways, is the Fat Sharks feel too narrow on my face. I have a big old head and a nice wide face, and the IPD adjustment in them doesn't go as far, or an Amway goes farther than the Fat Sharks.
Did you try HDOs yet?
I haven't tried HDOs.
Well, you got to try them, and then you're going to buy some. Just letting you know.
Well, I think I've mentioned it before, I saw Drew Racer buy a pair of HDOs and immediately go from like my line to like 20 seconds ahead of me. So.
Yeah, dude. And the funny thing about that is like, he got them used or a scratch and dent or something like that. So he kind of got a deal on them.
He did, and that's important.
And that's very important. But after I talked to him, after he got the deal, he was flying with him. I was like, so how'd you like them? And he went from 16x9, which Amways, however you say it, are. He went from that to the 4.3 of the Dominator HDO, and he at first he was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I like the 16x9. I was like, no, dude, you're gonna like the 4.3. I'm telling you. And after he tried them on, he talked to me. He's like, dude, I really like the 4.3.
But that's a lot of what camera you're running too. And I mean, we're gonna get into that a little bit later. But it does depend on that.
Yeah, well, exactly. And another good thing about the HDOs is it has the LED screen in it. instead of the LCD. So you get more vivid colors, you get better, dynamic range, all that good stuff on your goggles that just makes it look almost HD quality.
Absolutely. Now on the HDOs, I know on my Amways, one of the features that I love the most is on-screen kind of OSD from the goggles. So I could see what channel I'm on without taking my goggles off. I know where the button is. I feel around for it. I just hit the button, and I know that I'm skipping channels, and then I see the confirmation on screen on those goggles. Is that something that is module-based with Fat Sharks, or is just not a feature?
Yeah, that's one thing Fat Shark does a lot is they just sell you the goggles, and they're like, hey, go pick your own receiver. We're not, we're not going to supply one anymore, because most of the guys end up throwing out the ones they supplied anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So
those next waves you were just talking about.
The next waves I was just talking about. So now you just go, you buy whatever receiver module you want with diversity, and some of the new ones that are coming out, actually most of the new ones now that are coming out, have a built-in OSD. So like what you're just talking about right now is you can go and use the Fat Shark channel button, because they still have buttons on top, and that'll change the channel on the band. And then if you want to change your band, you just go to the module, and you don't have to take the goggles off. You just hit the button. Like if it has 3 buttons, you hit the left or right, or if it has a scroll wheel or whatever the case may be, you just go through your module on the outside, and it'll show you in the goggles, hey, I'm changing band. Hey, I'm changing channel.
I guess was another thing, now that you mention it, was ahead of its time for those Amway commanders.
It was, because not a lot of goggles out there were doing that. Even the more expensive Dominators that I used to have with my LaForge $130 diversity receiver, I would have to take them off every time, and I had to look at the screen on the outside to see what channel I'm on.
Yeah, and I know those old Next Wave ones with the dip switches, you had to look on the little chart that was printed on it, and
if you wanted to change
the
bands,
cover off,
dude.
change the band, change the So I mean, it's definitely come a long way since we've been started in it.
No, that's definitely like main priority. There is your video. You want to see good, so you're gonna want good goggles, and you're gonna want some kind of good video transmitter, some VTX. Those are the two that you're gonna have to have great video.
I got burned so early with cheap transmitters, and it wasn't until I tried that that immersion one back in the day. That was the immersion race band,
600 milliwatt.
Yeah, 600 milliwatt only, locked.
Yeah, and it was huge. It was like the size of a pack of gum.
Yeah,
like
fit into maybe one of my quads. That's why I got it. I bought it off my buddy who was like, it's too big for my quad, it won't fit in it. But it wasn't until I switched to that it was I was just absolutely blown away, and was like, I'm never buying a knockoff VTX ever. I'm not skimping on money on a VTX ever again. No,
yeah, I agree 100%, because those other companies that they focus on that and they put time, research, development, Team Black Sheep, Trappy, he's a big one with that. He puts the time, the effort, the QC into it to make sure you get the best optimal video possible without, another thing we didn't really mention, without bleeding over on other channels too.
And that's some variety of the environment. Yeah.
Some of the cheaper ones will just, like the ones you're talking about with dip switches, they'll bleed over onto multiple channels while you're racing.
And we're going to get into that a little bit later with what you're going to be looking for specifically what you're going to do. If you're flying in your backyard by yourself or just going out to the park, it doesn't matter. But for racing or freestyling or flying with a group, it's going to matter. Even long range, it's going to matter what your gear is. But I think what you're trying to say is really, that's what's made TBS, Team Black Sheep, the standard for video transmitters almost across, almost even video systems, because the TBS stubby antenna you see on flying, everybody's flying that, and they've been flying it now for years, so it shows it's a design that's stuck around.
Yeah,
I know you use them. I use them on some of my quads. On the Brap I'm flying, I'm using it on it. So
you get what you pay for, man. Seriously, like if you're gonna want to cheap out, get some kind of generic Amazon or Banggood antenna. It's not going to be tuned properly.
No.
It's going to give you crap video. And if you're going to get a cheap VTX that doesn't have the proper filtering built into it, you're going to get crap video.
And it's going to bleed. It's going to be a mess. So you don't really want that. So really, look around what's going to be the best for you on VTXs. There's a lot of really good ones out on the market right now. It wasn't like it used to be, but TBS is definitely the standard with the Unifies, the Unify Pros and the Unify Pro Nanos now.
Yep.
Everything running, even smart audio is really coming around, where you could change your VTX channel directly from the goggles. Really helps in team racing and kind of the endurance racing. Even practicing, you could set up to 3 quads on the line and just activate them as you need to go.
Yeah, it's amazing, dude.
Yeah, and so there's really a lot of technological advancements, and Team Black Sheep has really pushed that. There's a few now that are really coming out that are geared towards racing that look really, really cool. So, I mean, I guess we're all kind of waiting to see a little bit more, because that's the hype train got burned a little bit by some video modules and different transmitters and stuff back in the day, promising just way too much.
Me and a couple of dudes I know. I don't know if Andy does it, but he likes getting the new latest and greatest. But I like to wait. Like, I don't always buy when a company comes out with the first version, like Rapid Fire. I want to wait until like all the kinks, because people that have Rapid Fire are still having some issues. Like, it won't lock onto a channel. It'll instead of breakup, it'll have like black lines, and that's no go for me. Like, when I'm flying, I want none of that. So I'll wait until.
I don't think anybody actually wants any of that.
No, yeah, no, you're 100% right. You definitely don't want that. But I'll wait a couple versions after. And then I'll try it, because, like, I mean, Rapid Fire, they might be on their batch 2 now, maybe batch 3, and it's finally starting to, like, everybody's having pretty good video. They're not having the old issues they used to have with black screens and stuff like that. So if you wait and do your research, and if you're patient,
be patient.
You'll be good, you know.
And that was the same thing. I mean, I had to be very patient. I almost bought some Sky Zones. When I was waiting for the Amways to come back in stock after that first batch.
Paul loved those, man.
The Wave reviews. I think Paul even still flies the Sky Zones.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, but Ladrib was on the Sky Zones for a very long time. He loved those goggles. It's really all personal preference, because it depends on how it fits your face.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in addition to goggles we've covered, we've now touched on transmitters. The next step, cameras.
Cameras, dude.
Man, that's your eye.
Yep, that is your retina in your quad.
What's your favorite FPV camera out there right now?
I've tried a bunch of them. I started out on the HS 1177 and
the standard Sony CMOS
huge
sensor.
full size, and then they started getting smaller, and I finally landed on the RunCam Micro Swift.
That's absolutely that seems almost kind of standard even for what a lot of people are doing. I know the Racer just came out, but the Micro Swift was a very, very popular camera once everything moved from that full-size form factor to the Micro.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Racer. I have a couple of those too, because they were on a sale. Pyroflip was doing a sale on them where instead of almost $40, they were down to 20. So I bought a couple, but the one thing I don't like about the Racer, which this is what you guys are going to have to decide as well and do your research on, and it's kind of just you got to try one or the other and see which one you like best. And it was CMOS was the Racer was a CMOS sensor.
The type of sensor.
Instead of the CCD sensor, which the Micro Swift is. And the difference between those two, like, yeah, your CMOS, you're going to get a little bit better of a picture. You're going to get more colors. But I didn't like how it handled darkness or light change or any of that. Even if I like tuned it, messed with different settings, I just couldn't get used to it. I did not like it at all. I went back to the CCD. It was the most I was comfortable with, the Micro Swift, and I've been running that forever now.
And that's kind of like a lot of things too, is what you're comfortable with, what fits for you. Mm-hmm. Because I am also a Micro Swift guy.
Yeah, dude.
I know we've talked about it at length a lot of times. I'm also very impressed because the Swift, the picture quality is not the only, deciding factor. Mm-mm. But I get comments all the time. I run a lot of the Micro Robins.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the new one.
Not the Robin. I run the Sparrow.
Oh, okay, yeah. And
the old budget one.
And that's CMOS too, I'm pretty
sure. It's CMOS. But yeah, the Robin is the new version of the Sparrow from what I gather and understand from just looking at it, the specs side by side. It's kind of the budget version, but the Sparrow I bought because it was the budget version of the Run Cam.
Yeah.
And while still being double the price of a cheap cam you could buy, those pricing differences matter. You pay for what you get with a camera. I've never been disappointed when I've paid more for a camera or a VTX or a pair of goggles. I mean, I've only really bought I've bought a couple $50 pair of goggles, but I've also bought, $350 pair of goggles, which is a big deal. And spending money on the video system, I've never been disappointed and wished I would have spent my money anywhere. If anything, I always think like I should have done this sooner.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And that's why, man, once I found my camera, dude, I haven't changed. I'll try stuff out here and there because I'll do it, if, hey, Matt, should we carry this on Flight Test Tour? Try it out real quick. But I've always found myself to come back to the Swift.
Well, and that's something, too, that especially in the field of racing, and, I mean, even if you're going to build out a fleet of different quads, having them feel the same starts with how you see the air, you see from the quad.
Yeah, you see your props in the image. Like what I do when I'm looking through my FPV feed. All right, am I at the right angle? How do I know I'm at the right angle? I'm kind of looking at the sky the same way, and I can kind of see my props the same way. But when I try different cameras, I'll put it at the same angle. I'll look at it, third person. I'll look at them. They're at the same angle, but the lenses are different, or the lenses will say
the field of view.
Yeah, the lenses will say it's the same exact lens, but it's really not because this manufacturer
2.1 120 degree field of view.
Correct, man. So like when I do that, or when I switch them so often, I can't race with this quad, but I can race with this quad like perfectly. So I just try to keep them all the same.
No, and it really does vastly change, especially everybody I think could attest who's ever flown a 16x9 versus 4x3 or switched from goggles could be like, oh my God, it feels like I've never flown before.
Which a lot of the cameras out there, I don't even don't quote me on this, guys. Don't quote me on this. Tell me if I'm wrong. Definitely tell me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure majority of the cameras out there are 4x3.
Yeah.
Rather than the 16x9.
Absolutely. And that's why I was originally attracted to the Sparrow. Because the 16x9 matches the Amway 16x9, which is kind of, you say everything runs 4x3 because that's native to the Fat Sharks, and Fat Sharks are going to run that. And if they're the industry standard, everybody's going to make an image ratio that it directly, correlates to that.
Another thing on top of that, though, not only because Fat Shark runs it, but the 4.3 versus the 16.9. I've tried both. The 4.3, you just get more up and down.
And
that's way better for racing, man. Like, way better for racing. And Andy's the proof in the pudding, man. He went from 16x9 to 4x3, 1,000 times faster, thinking 5 gates ahead, seeing 5 gates ahead, can tell his speed more accurately because now he's got the more up and down rather than the side to side like a 16x9.
And I absolutely will, I'll vouch for that because knowing your race, I mean, when you start really cooking with race and you start jacking the camera angle, so much more becomes your pitch. And so seeing what's above and below and being able to accurately judge that, because you're not guessing because it's slightly off the screen. You see what's leading up to it, but it's slightly off the screen. But seeing that whole picture.
Yep.
So I absolutely will. And I mean, I think you're convincing me as this article goes on. If my wife listens to this, it's Matt's fault that I want to upgrade my goggles.
Sorry, Mrs. Condor. you're gonna have to put a little bit of that vacation money aside for new HDO goggles.
No, we love our vacations.
All right,
I'd rather go on vacation than get HDOs.
Well, you're gonna have to do a little bit more side projects of making logos to afford that.
Yeah, she's okay. She's okay with that.
We'll be okay
with it. We'll be okay with that. We'll go with that. We'll run with that now.
Definitely, man. And then we already kind of touched on modules, but I do want to bring up like aftermarket DVRs and like ground stations.
You're playing with that FXT one right now, aren't you?
That's like the new hot thing right now. I think it's like $60, and it's an external DVR. And what's super nice about this external DVR It records in 60 frames a second, which most goggles only record in 30 frames a second. And it has Wi-Fi on it, so you can upload it straight to your phone, post it on Instagram, which is very cool. And another thing that I've noticed, it drops a lot less frames, because like Fat Shark DVRs, they're known to be not the best out there.
And I feel like the same thing, because I think it's the identical part has been traced to being in the Amways as well for the DVR. You even on the Fat Sharks, you always seem to get more video breakup in the DVR than what you've actually seen in the goggles.
Yeah, and that's something with the internal DVR. So I'm kind of glad that like some of these companies are coming with the external little. It looks like a pager, man. Like it's you clip it on your belt, you plug the cord right into your goggles.
The importance of the video out, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah, and then you just hit record on that, and it has its own external SD card, and it just does a great job. All my testing I've done with it, like. It was side to side. I've looked at them both side to side, played both videos, and Fat Shark definitely more breakup, definitely more frames dropped compared to the FXT where less breakup.
And now I know we've talked about our buddy Ryan before, Mr. Noise, down at Ready Made RC, and he was the first one to put together a side by side of those videos.
Yeah, and I watched that as soon as I saw that. I was like, man, I gotta get my hands on that. So I went out, got one, and I've been playing with it ever since. And I don't really post my DVR footage ever. It's more of I get to look back at my stuff. I definitely, since it has Wi-Fi now, I'm definitely gonna start, once I do races and stuff, start posting more to Instagram, because I could just upload it straight to there, because it makes it into an MP4 format. Boom, everything you can do right on your phone. Boom, you're up on Instagram.
Absolutely.
Or up on YouTube.
And which is a big thing. And I mean, we were talking about cameras. We kind of skipped over it in our hot conversation as we were going. But what was those HD cams that are coming out? Because that's kind of that same thing. Like, you could record in, you would say like that FXT, the aftermarket DVR module is kind of like an HD DVR. It's not necessarily like you're DVRing what you're seeing in the goggles, so it's still analog. It's not actually HD, but it is in a way better quality than what is normally recorded.
Yeah, but it's not up to par with the cameras you're talking about, the all-in-one FPV feed and the recording of the HD footage.
The Runcam Split, the Cadex Turtle.
And
I mean, there's
Fox Sears got one too out there, and those are pretty nice. But my experience with them, I've tried both the Runcam and the Turtle, the Cadex Turtle. I haven't tried the Fox Sears one. But my experience with both of them, they're nice for like a little cinematic or small rig that you want to have indoors and get HD footage.
A little micro or something, but
they're not GoPro quality, which everybody wants that GoPro quality HD. So,
but on a rig you can't carry a GoPro. Those are the perfect solution.
I know Tommy came out with the Brat, the Oh My God Brat, just for that, and it's pretty awesome. But there are a couple downsides. Not GoPro quality, like I said. And then when you fly it, if you're racing or doing any fast movement, you do have a delay. You can tell a latency on those, because it's doing so much processing of like, okay, I'm recording all this HD. All right, here comes this HD footage, and I gotta keep giving this guy good video, FPV video.
The image sensors are larger and capture way more data than your typical Runcam, regular low definition 4x3, 400 by 80 pixels resolution camera. So just the technology is not behind it to make it as fast as just pure analog to OSD or flight controller, or even just straight to the transmitter. And you won't see that difference unless you're kind of pushing the maximum limit of speed.
High speed. And one thing racers do that I saw multiple times is they'll take that and mount it as a second camera on the rig, so they can race. And that camera, since it's so small form factor to get HD footage, all that camera's job to do is to record the HD, because it weighs nothing compared to a GoPro Hero,
even
or a Session. It weighs minuscule. So you want to put something like that on your race rig, but you don't want to race through it. So you run your normal Runcam Micro Swift, and then right on top of it, there's already some frames out there that have 2 camera spots.
Mm-hmm.
Right on top of it, you run the CADX Turtle or your Runcam Micro or whatever the Runcam one's called. Split, yes. Or you run the Runcam Split right on top to get that HD footage along with your FPV without it, dealing with the latency issue.
No, and that's an awesome way. I know a lot of people are switching to that because for racing, you don't necessarily need a super 4K ultra HD, and I mean those cameras look beautiful, especially when you get them in those racing environments. And maybe I'm just a FPV racing guy and very passionate about it, but I think there's a beauty in so many of these courses, especially when you get like a marker down on the ground. You know, they put either those little soccer markers or they'll paint a line on the ground
or
that mark the course itself.
MultiGP sells like arrow banners
the arrows,
you put on the ground.
Exactly. Like seeing that stuff, seeing the gates, and like actually being able to see it in HD quality on a race course like is awesome. And I mean, like even a couple weeks ago when I was flying out and we did that recording at the Zilla race, the Zilla Racing League race, I ran an HD. I ran my GoPro rig first couple 3, 4, 5 batteries that I flew of the day just because I wanted to see the beauty of the course, and it was a little swampy. And the GoPro did end up half submerged in water for about 4 minutes because I crashed in a puddle. But it was because of that GoPro that it kept the stack out of the pond and kept me from getting soaked. But there is definitely a certain beauty to these courses. It looks beautiful, especially when you get better definition on the quads flying around you, because on DVR they're just a black speck, and when you're in the goggles you're trying to get as far away as possible from somebody else riding that same line, because a midair ends a day badly for everybody. I have a lot of good footage, I think, of you going down, even in my GoPro, of you midair and right off the gate. You guys crashed, I think, right in front of me a couple weeks ago. So I got to pull that. I'll show that to you.
Nice, man. No, I don't want to see that. You're trying to rub it in, dude. You're trying to rub it in.
See it. So we've talked about cameras and HD cameras and the transmitters and goggles, the modules and the receivers that we got. The last step of FPV is the antennas, and we've touched on them a little bit, but there's kind of the circular polarized standard. Nobody runs the dipoles anymore, especially in kind of crowded environments. And that comes with an issue of not wanting to. You want to be spot on your channel and only be recepted by you. You don't want to be picked up by somebody else near a channel or near your frequency.
I feel you. And the antennas, man, there's a difference between what antenna you put on your quad versus what you put on your goggles. And I'm just going to go through and tell you guys what I run personally. On my quad, I usually run the Triumph Stubby from TBS, or I'll run the Lumineer Axie Stubby, which is a super small stubby, probably half the size of the Triumph.
I love those.
Dude, they're amazing for racing. But then on my goggles, I'll run... I have right now from video aerial systems, our dude Alex Greaves. Makes the best antennas. He actually makes a Triumph for Trappy and them over at TBS. He tunes all his antennas, does QC. He does a great job. I run the Mad Mushroom V2 for my one antenna on the Diversity, and then I also run his Crosshair Extreme, which is a patch antenna, which gives you more of that cone shape. It won't give you video behind you, but it'll give you a farther cone shape in front of you, so you can get that longer distance out there with the patch. But then you run the circular polarized antenna as well, so when you do go around you or behind you, the Diversity is like, oh, my patch isn't working, switch to the circular polarized, and that's what I love. That's the antennas I run.
That's exactly, and I mean, I learned from you guys and everybody else. It seems like everybody's kind of running that because it's such a versatile setup. If you're just like gonna have antennas plugged in your goggles for regardless of the environment you're gonna fly with a patch, try to face the direction you're flying, and you could get quite far. Or if you know you're going to be in kind of a 360 environment, flying behind you, flying in front of you, which is usually not common for racing. Racing, we're in front of ourselves, but you're not always in your field of view because you'll stretch from far right to far left.
Yep.
And so that's where like a circular polarized is going to complement that patch antenna.
Correct.
For your signal strength and just, you just got to think of where it's focused and the way that like the actual radio waves work, of how the signals are sending. They're not going to penetrate concrete and, trees as well as they are just going to fly through straight air.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to bring up is every environment's different. So sometimes I'll switch out, like 9 times out of 10, I'll mostly keep the Triumph stubby on my quad. That's the one, or the Axie stubby. I won't really switch those unless I'm going left-handed or right-handed. But on my receivers on my head, if I'm flying inside or I'm flying, a race that's super close to me, or I'm not going out far, I will actually switch those out. So like on the inside, if I race inside, I normally run a dipole on my micro because it's less weight, but dipoles are known to put out left and right hand signals. They don't really have right or left. And on the inside of a place, even if you have a right-hand antenna, it's going to go out, it's going to bounce, and it'll switch to left, and then it'll bounce again, and then it'll switch to right. The feed will keep switching. So what I'll do on the inside courses, I'll run 2 circular polarized antennas, and I'll run one right, one left. That way I'm picking up the best video from left, the best video from right, and that seems to work out the best.
That really helps in those environments where you're bouncing around. I know I predominantly have always run left ever since I started racing, left-hand polarized, just because the majority of people I feel run right. And so it's a lot easier to just get a little bit clearer video when you're on a line and everybody's, 3 other dudes, 4 other dudes or ladies are running, right-hand polarized and you're running left-handed. It kind of just helps separate a little bit out of that, especially outdoors in a wide open field. Like that's going to be your best environment to get your video.
No, I hear you on that, and that kind of brings us into our next little topic here is video issues. So I kind of touched on it with indoors, how it bounces around, but on
the multipathing
and all that, but on race day, there's some definitely good tips you can do to avoid video issues. And what I like to do is, like, before we go to a race or anything like that, I'll set up all my channels and I'll check in the goggles, make sure everything's good. And I'll actually go through my steps like we've talked before, arming it, making sure it's good, setting it farther away from myself. If I start getting video breakup, I'm going to search that problem out and do that.
Or leave your quad plugged in a room of your house and go walk to the other end of the house and face the wall away from it and try to shield the antennas to just make sure that, like, that signal's locked.
Correct, yeah. And you want super good video on race day. At least try to have your best. And if you don't have your best and you're having breakup while you're flying, you got to fly through that, dude. I've spotted for so many people where they're like, oh, man, I'm racing. Bad video. And then I'm like, well, there's 3 quads flying in front of you. You're trying to get past that signal. Just fly through it. It'll come back.
Yep.
As long as you did all your pre-checks and everything, and you have good video on your quad,
it's gonna come back.
It's gonna come back. You don't need to freak out about it.
Unless you're flying like away from you and you're 2 miles away and somebody's like, bad video. Like, no, turn around now.
Yeah, exactly. But on race day, it's not like that because you're going in this crazy zigzag circled track kind of in a way.
Right in front of you, the maximum you're gonna be away from yourself, is probably a 1,000, maybe a couple thousand feet at absolute most.
At most, man. They're usually pretty tight, small tracks.
Yeah, if you think about MultiGP, a lot of their tracks are designed to be run on the size of a football field. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about just a little kind of like high school stadium or something, like, you're not going to be flying out of that range, and that's perfectly fine. MultiGP almost runs on a standard now of 25 milliwatts.
Yeah, dude, it's all 25 milliwatts.
Which really helps when flying with other people. But
the one thing, though, like, if you're saying you have bad video, there's a difference, though. Like, I'm talking about, like, breakup. When you have a couple little breakup, you're going to...
Just some noise.
But there are other video issues that you can diagnose, and you might have, like, your screen's just black. What is it when your screen's just black? Usually, 9 times out of 10, it's
your camera dead.
Your camera's dead, or your signal came disconnected.
Yeah,
You know?
a solder joint popped off if you're running OSD, or if you're running that VTX straight into, or you're running the camera straight to the VTX. Like if one of those pop off, there are tons of issues that happen. But if you see static, it usually means you're not on the right channel or your VTX is not broadcasting.
Agreed. Or another thing that I've run into too is multiple lines over your video, squiggly lines. And that's usually just a noisy setup 9 times out of 10. So you want to put something on like a cap or a LC filter or something on your car.
And so the motors and ESCs, depending on where you have everything mounted, sometimes the electronics could actually interfere with each other. A lot of people keep their control link, their FR Sky receiver or their Spectrum receiver far away, at least as far as they can in the build from their VTX. Because you have these two things sending signals, and yes, they're on different frequencies, but yes, there is, they're slightly radioactive, or the radio interference that they're going to get from each other is going to not help, especially when they're right on top of each other. So that's definitely, but I mean, that's racing. For freestyle, you want definitely a different kind of, maybe not necessarily different.
It's the same setup, but you have like more options.
You have different priorities, because you're not trying to not bleed over somebody else's channel, and you're not necessarily trying to stay, how you stay 25 milliwatts to stay so that you're not interfering with other people when you're right in front of them.
No, jack that up to 800, 1 watt, something like that.
600,
now,
800.
side note, real quick, guys, when you do go over 25 milliwatts, which a lot of people don't talk about this, is when you do go over 25 milliwatts, you're technically supposed to have a ham radio license. Like, that's technically the law. And I know, it's an unspoken rule, and not a lot of people have their ham radio licenses. But if you do go over it, like, you're supposed to have it.
Yeah, you're technically operating a amateur band radio at that point. So you need to be licensed as a radio operator. If you're really out in the middle of nowhere, and here in the United States, like, the FCC doesn't necessarily strictly enforce it. However, just it's good to know that, like, you do have the possibility when you're broadcasting on a little bit stronger signals that you can interfere with some very important systems.
There's some channels like you can't even go on, don't even touch, low band and all that. That's like our weather Doppler stuff.
Yeah.
And then even like, I know we did, which it didn't end up being our fault, but not last year, the year before, we flew FPV at our Cleveland National Air Show, and the forklift, like, radio guy or camera guy or whatever he may be, he was broadcasting on 5.8. And we didn't know he was broadcasting on 5.8. Now, it wasn't our fault. Like, we were completely in the right. We were on 25 milliwatts. We tested it. We had our own channels. We were nowhere near his channel, which I forget what his channel was. But come to find out, it was some kind of Wi-Fi booster that they had at the air show, too, that was interrupting with that guy's 5.8 frequency.
And see, that's a problem with Wi-Fi, too. If you're flying in a neighborhood or a very crowded kind of 5.8, you need to kind of find the channel that's going to be the clearest.
Stay away from 5800 if you know there's Wi-Fi. That's going to be the channel that it's going to be close to, is the 5800.
And you're definitely going to get noise and breakup, and that's more spot on, because as you go through channels, they do vary from what's the lowest one, in 5600 or even 5700.
I don't know. I usually run race band 1. It's like 5615 or something like that.
5650 maybe.
50 something. Yeah, I don't know the numbers exactly. We always talk about race band 1, race band 2.
Yeah,
Fat Shark 1, Fat Shark 2.
You just got to get your race day quads
Yep.
business card with the frequency chart on the back.
Yep. Or I know Hot Dog FPV, or dude over there, he makes goggle straps with the actual band and everything on it.
I know I have probably a couple printouts, and I always have my phone on me where I could look it up.
Most of your modules will tell you too. If you're on race band 1, it'll tell you right underneath it what the actual frequency is.
Absolutely. I actually had a problem with my one buddy who was running photography studio lights that were Wi-Fi broadcast, and literally he turned them on. My video signal just completely cut out.
Dude, it's crazy how stuff like that interferes with each other, because I was when I was doing my Spyro project, which you guys can go check that out, flight test video, It's kind of sucks because we had to blur half the video out, so it kind of got bad views. But it's okay. It's still awesome to watch. I'm glad I can go back and watch it. But when
licensing rights,
am
I right?
It didn't really have anything to do with video because I wasn't running like FPV or anything. But the same kind of scenario happened. Was the professional directors and video guys, they have this remote viewer screen that they would give to like the Activision people, and they would be able to watch what the camera op was doing and seeing what the camera view was. But it was running on 2.4 when DJI system, or it might have been running on 5.8, which DJI system bounces between 2.4 5.8.
The light bridge.
It was making my quad, the Spyro Dragon, do crazy stuff, dude. So I had to physically go over to them and be like, hey, you guys can't use this screen. Because it was like, and the same kind of thing happens with FPV signals.
Right.
Is somebody will run Wi-Fi, or they'll run some crazy equipment you don't know about, and you'll be like, why is my goggles, why is my video breaking up? I know DJI even, like when I run with a Mavic sometimes, if that person doesn't physically go in their app and change their DJI product to 2.4 video, you will get the craziest video nonsense in your goggles that you're like confused about. You're like, what's going on? I've seen it numerous times now, so I know what it is. But they're,
when you're not used to seeing it or don't know what to look for,
you're gonna be like, what's going on? Why is my video crappy? What's wrong with my setup? Why can't I get out 100 feet before I lose video? And it's because you're running with a DJI guy, and their video actually hops between 5.8, 2.4.
And it could be stomping on your signal.
It just keeps scrolling through all the videos. That's how DJI's products do. It scrolls through to get the best optimal video for,
kind of like
that Phantom
that
or Mavic.
Spectrum protocol that just keeps the digital...
The 2.4, the band hopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does the same thing with their video. It hops between 2.4 because their light bridge is not like, it's their own system controlling, controlling. So they get the option to switch between 2.4 video and 5.8 video.
Which is great when you're flying just an aerial, photography platform out by yourself. Not so great when you're flying with your buddies.
No, yeah. You definitely get upset and frustrated real quick because you don't know what's going on.
And you're going to get that. I mean, even with freestyling's a little bit easier to get away with good video because you're usually by yourself. Now, you are flying in sometimes some sketch environments, so you're going to have the multipathing and some signal interference. I mean, you're going through a concrete, you're behind 2 or 3 concrete walls.
You're not going to get a great video.
No, but that's where you have to learn how to fly through it, learn how to fly that line that you're looking for, and just kind of keep going with it.
Yeah, the most sketchy though, like after freestyle though, the most sketchy thing where you want no video problems whatsoever is that long range, that mid to long range. I haven't dabbled in it too much. I've seen my buddy Ian like dive mountains and hills and stuff.
Mountain ranges.
But I've only gone mid-range, which is maybe a mile out. Which
is still a lot farther than I've went.
It's still far, but you see these guys like Jet and Gab at 707. They go out and dive these crazy cliffs, and they cannot afford any kind of video issues. So you'll see them with ground stations. You'll see them with big patch antennas. You'll see them. Luckily, the modules nowadays, they're able to keep up. But back in the day, you had this giant ground station with tracking and huge patch antennas and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you see the antennas they're even running on their quads, they're 8 inches away from the frame. They are not planning on crashing. They're just planning on cruising.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know. I mean, most of the guys that fly regularly, most of you guys out there kind of know, but if you're new, you don't know that the carbon actually interferes with your video signal. So the closer your antenna is to the carbon fiber, the worse the video is good.
Absolutely. Carbon fiber is conductive.
Yep.
So, I mean, even you've known if you've, tapped a multimeter, your carbon in a pad and beep. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, we got some continuity here. It's definitely touching each other. So you want to get those for longer range. You want to get those antennas as far away as possible. But that's the trade-off. And I mean, a lot of things with this video system, it's going to be what you're doing specifically. Because I love my Axie antenna because I tuck it nice and close up to the frame, because when I'm racing, I know when I'm pushing it, I'm going to be crashing, and I went through so many antennas and even broken VTXs, which I'm glad they've went to the UFL, and we didn't even cover into to all those different connector types of, the UFL or the MMCX or the what's the SMA, the regular
the
regular
one thing
standard.
the one thing I can say on that is just match it up. If your VTX has MMCX, make sure you get some kind of MMCX antenna. Or
multiples, because you're going to need any race. They're going to recommend that you have right hand and left hand.
And that's only if you're going straight to your VTX. A lot of the VTXs will come with a pigtail with the SMA. Which
all the TBS ones now do.
That's my favorite because it's the easiest to change antennas. It's the easiest to go from left hand, right hand. But if you are one of those guys that just want to go straight into your VTX, make sure you match it up. UFL to UFL antenna, MMCX to MMCX antenna.
And SMA, the male and female both.
Correct.
So you're going to want to make sure which one you have. We all know the difference between male and female.
Yeah, and there's RP SMA. That is probably what you're referring to. Maybe.
That's the male and female.
You get like the
male end or the female end.
Just match them up. You got an RP SMA, get an RP SMA antenna. You got an SMA antenna, get an SMA. So on and so forth. And that way you can get optimal video experience and it just, you want the best video possible.
Absolutely. I think that's actually going to kind of wrap up the conversation here today on video systems. We covered a lot, and there's just a lot more to cover, but come on, guys. You're going to want to listen in the future.
Yeah, dude. It's leave a little cliffhanger. That way you guys can come back because we're going to be talking about more gear down the road. We can only cover so much in an hour, and I'm glad you guys even come back and listen to this and stay with us for an hour here. And make sure you go to that YouTube page. Make sure you hit that like, that subscribe. Look out for iTunes, Spotify, all the good things. We're working on getting those running because that's a big request that you guys want to get it.
Hopefully, by the time this actually airs, you're listening to this on iTunes.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that might even be awesome.
Because we're going to make it happen.
That'll be sick.
That's shooting. That's swinging for the fences, shooting for the stars.
We got big things coming, guys. Big things.
Thank you for being a part of it, guys. I think this is going to wrap up another episode of Stick Time with Matt and Dave. How do you sign us off every time, Matt?
All right, guys. That was another episode, and see you on the next one.
See you on the flip side.
Does anybody else in this world feel like me? Feel like me? Feel like me? Feel like me? Feel like